7 skutečně.
Good evening. I would like to welcome you in the Václav Havel Library. We have the next of our talks in English. Today we invited Petr Kolář, who is the former Czech ambassador in US and in Russia. But first he worked together with Václav Havel, and he was also one of his advisors to the foreign policy. And this evening will be focused more on the foreign policy, which is quite recent topic, together with shift of our government towards the new agenda. So next week, June 19, we will have a discussion about the Russia and Tibet. Who is interested in the foreign policy is also welcome here, but this discussion will be in Czech. So the interview will be held by David Vaughan, who is the who is the journalist from radio, original from Britain, and the floor is yours. And the last, maybe I would like to invite you for the next talk in English, which will be September 10, and it will be focused on the theater. We will invite Barbara Day, who is also living for many years in Prague, and he is preparing a book about the Czech theater in the 70s and 80s. So who is interested in this topic?
Barbara also wrote a wonderful book called The Velvet Philosophers about the underground universities. Well, Marta, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for coming as well. It's a small group, which I think is nice because it means that we can be as informal as we like. So that I don't have too much of a monopoly on the questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt either of us at any stage. If you have anything that you want to say, or that you would like to interrupt because you think it's wrong, or you'd like to add some detail, please don't hesitate. I think that the official title is I'm not quite sure whether it's grammatically correct, but it's my fault because I wrote it, Do We Risk a New Cold War? I think we're going to cover a lot more than just that, simply because your career has covered so far a great deal more than just that, and I think that if we maybe look chronologically at some of the experiences that you've had as a diplomat, also as deputy minister, and also prior to 1989, in the early years of your life when things were rather more difficult for you. So, and I think we can lead up probably to the situation now, the relations between the Czech Republic and the European Union and Russia, of course. But I'd like to actually start with your beginnings, because I've met you a couple of times, and on each time I've realized that you're a South Bohemian patriot, that it means a lot to you where you come from.
Well, that's true. I'm very proud of my Southern Bohemian roots. But it doesn't mean that I don't like Prague. We moved to Prague when I was 6, and actually I am working and living now in Prague. I spent my formative years in Prague, but Southern Bohemia always was the place where I wanted to at least visit and spend some time during holidays. And well, it's true that when we are visiting Southern Bohemia with my wife, we always feel the special spirit there, which is encouraging us and which is giving us the feeling that we are somehow, kind of better people, sort of.
And I mean, it's a European subject,
well,
isn't
something in it. It's kind of for me, it's kind of the Riviera, which I perceive as a place for holidays and vacations. But now it's even more than that, it's the home again. So Prague is the place which I love, and I work here, and I'm just now trying to learn about it, something from my friends, mostly foreigners who know Prague better than me, because as visitors and tourists they can really look around and observe things which I'm usually ignoring as running to my office and just trying to be punctual and meet people on the right time.
And do you think you have a particular sensitivity to regional identities, not being a Prague person?
Well, it is, you know, once you are traveling a lot and you are spending a lot of time abroad, you need to have some place which is the home, with all this sense. And we were spending a lot of time abroad with our kids, so we wanted to give them feeling that there is one place on this planet where we can call it home. So now it's our house in southern Bohemia, close to Třeba.
And in terms of your upbringing, you didn't grow up in a typical normalization family, did you?
No, actually, my parents were classical products of this era. They met at the university. I was born when my father and mother were 21 students. It's probably a coincidence. Some would call it accident, but coincidence, nice coincidence. They met mother from southern Bohemia, father from northern Moravia, and I'm the product of that love. So they enjoyed the Prague Spring very much, and I was born in '62, and in '68 they were starting their career, and they were full of enthusiasm, full of hope, and full of positive energy, as many people here at that time. And my father, who is from the bourgeois family, wanted to be the communist. He wanted to build the new equal society regime which would be fair to everyone. Kind of the young naivism, which is and idealism, which is quite normal. Then the shock, which appeared here for many people by invasion, was something what really waked up not only my father and mother, but many of their friends. And
even you as a 6-year-old?
Actually, honestly, when I came back from the summer camp and I saw the museum, National Museum, with a lot of holes in the facade by the bullets, I was really excited. And I remember even the invasion of the tanks, I look at them with a great admire. I love that, you know, big tanks and soldiers with the guns. It was an exciting time, and I didn't understand why my mother is crying, why my father is all the time arguing and very furiously condemning that. Because for me, well, it was the interesting time, interesting adventure. But then my father said that he can't be anymore a member of the Communist Party, so he gave them the book, kind of the identity card, membership card. He gave it back, and then his career was quite different than he was dreaming about. And I
probably didn't help your career as a schoolboy either.
Well, I didn't care so much at that time. I started when I was in the teenage years, and then I realized that we have some troubles, and well, I was actually proud of my father, because many of my schoolmates wanted to have a parents like I have. So thanks to them, thanks to their envy, I realized that I should be proud of my parents.
And you very nearly emigrated in the 80s, didn't you?
Actually, I didn't emigrate. We were nearly, yeah. And we were trying to emigrate. It was, but it was quite hard to leave with the whole family. So we had a plan that I will escape first, actually legally. In the late 80s, it was, this regime, this communist regime was so corrupted and so corroded that they invented something very special. Until that time, it was quite hard to go abroad, to so-called Western countries. But then they desperately needed some hard currency, so they were actually offering people, if they come to bank with some amount of German mark or
hard currency,
simply some hard currency, dollars, they would allow them to, once they leave the money for some time in the bank, and it depends on the amount of money, they would then allow you to travel for a few days or a week or two to the West. But they were always very careful allowing all the family to go together. So plan was that I will be first who will ask for asylum, and then through the Red Cross we will get the family back. But when I was in Western Germany at this time, and I told my wife that now is the time and I'm going to apply for asylum, she told me, but our dog is sick. So I had to go back because she didn't want to solve the problem on her own, and our dog was like the second baby. We had one son at the time. So I came back, and
it was just as well, in fact.
Actually,
the regime fell. And
yeah, actually, I was very lucky one because some of my friends who succeeded to leave the country in the summer, for example, '89, they were afterwards very jealous because they were watching the events here in Prague by TV. They were just, kissing the screen of TV and trying to somehow spiritually at least be with us. And we were here. For us, it was really quite difficult, even from that personal reason that my wife was pregnant second time, and in quite developed stage of the pregnancy, she wanted to demonstrate as well, demonstrate with me. And in October, actually it was not in November, but in October, 28th of October, police was using very special tactic, they were separating people to small groups because they could manage it better. And my wife was separated from me, and then we met coincidentally in Opletova Street, because we managed to escape. But she told me the very funny story. Police pushed her group to the doors of Zlatá Husa, which is one of the famous hotels here in Manchester Square. And suddenly somebody opened the door. It was a German lady, tourist, who started to beat by her back the police with their heads and called them Gestapo, and she pulled my wife inside, and then she, through laundry or some kitchen, she got out of the hotel to Opletova Street, and then we met.
But I'm very interested that, like so many people, you were in your 20s and you were suddenly, just after the fall of communism, thrown into the world of high politics, pretty much.
Well, actually, not exactly, David. It was a bit different. Many of my friends told me that now we have to build a country and we have to do something positive for the future. And I was very selfish at that time. I said, no, I have to do something for myself. If I want to be useful later, I need to do something with my education. And I immediately, once I got a passport and a chance to go abroad, at that time I started work with Willem Prechan Institute of Contemporary History, and I got the chance to go to the United States. By the way, this gentleman, Professor Hauner, who is sitting here, he was the person who offered very generously his flat in Washington to me, so I could spend some lovely time there studying in National Archives and doing a lot of other studies. But it was really funny when I came to the United States first time, totally self-confident, young, conceited chap who believes that the world is his. And my first clash with the reality, with the interview, with the immigration officer in the airport, then I realized that my English really is not so good as I believed, and then I had to improve it.
And you eventually, in the mid-1990s, you became ambassador in Sweden, didn't you?
And actually, when I came back from United States, then I go there again. Then I got the offer to study in London, and I use it fully. Then the third offer came from Norwegian Nobel Institute, and I spent half of year, one semester in Norwegian Nobel Institute in Oslo. It was in 1993. We were leaving on December 2nd, 93. So it was the second day of our can I call it independence? Well, from Slovakia, after our divorce, and actually I came back to the Czech Republic, which was quite strange, and I still, at that time, I remember that I couldn't somehow used to say Czech Republic. I was still saying Czechoslovakia.
And it's interesting, when we met last week, you said that you completely failed to predict the split of Czechoslovakia.
Absolutely. Because I was actually arguing with some of my friends in the United States who were very concerned about the future of our federation. One of them was very distinguished and very, I would say, special kind of person, former Czech ambassador to the United Nations, Jan Papánek. He was a Slovak, but he believed very much that he is a Czechoslovak. So he believed in the idea of Czechoslovakism. His icons Masaryk and Beneš were for him the mentors, and he believed that Czechoslovakia is so dear to us that we have to do everything possible to protect it and save it. And I was arguing with him because he told me, I'm very concerned, I'm really very scared by some features of nationalism in Slovakia, and who is that Mr. Mečar, it will fail, and why this Klaus is not opposing it. And I was, well, very naive, and as I told you, stupid, and as well, it never happened, why we would divorce? We love each other. It's great to live together. So my prediction,
I think that now that you've spent a lot of time in other European countries, I think you would probably come to a very different conclusion.
Well, then traveling, I would recommend to everyone, but it's quite cheap recommendation because not everyone can afford it, but I would really very much appreciate if more people could spend some time abroad and then go back, because this is something what really is very formative and educative. My years in Ireland, for example, when I was the ambassador to Ireland, when I realized that this is still Europe, and they are not able in the end of the 20th century somehow mentally overcome the problem of Northern Ireland, the division of the country, and
that must have been fascinating for you as an outsider to see this sort of centuries-old problem, which
and especially
still hasn't gone away.
After our experience with, well, I could call it velvet, as we were having a velvet revolution, so velvet divorce. It was quite hard to understand the arguments of some of them, and even when I realized that some politicians there, they have it hidden, but once you became more close to them, they were quite openly admiring some terrorists and some terroristic tactics, because, well, they said, well, Britain was always, squeezing us, so that was the only way how we could fight.
There's another thing I'd like to ask you about your diplomatic career, or the early stage of your diplomatic career, because you did something, in fact, in 1997 that no diplomat ever does. You left your post in Sweden. You resigned from being ambassador in Sweden because of what you saw as corruption or as questions about the financing of the Civic Democratic Party, the party that was the leading party in the government at the time. And it's something that diplomats very rarely do, but you obviously felt strongly. I mean, strongly enough to take this step.
Well, first, David, you know, I have to say that I was not the typical diplomat, probably. In usual situation, you know, in normal standard democracies, ambassadors are people who are about 50, no, in my age. Yeah. And I was 33. I was appointed as the ambassador to Sweden, Kingdom of Sweden. And I really still had a very much of this enthusiasm under my skin from the Velvet Revolution, and I believe that if we really want to build the country, the state, which should be fully democratic and integrated into the Western family, then that we have to also behave like civilized people, and that rule of law is really not just an empty phrase, and that this is something what means something very concrete. So I, with my idealism and naivism, when I learned about some false or fake sponsors, I believe that I have to do something with that, and I just try to persuade some politicians here to be brave enough and openly reject it. They didn't do that, so for me at that time, the only option was to openly say what I know to the journalists. Today it's called like whistleblowers, but I was not whistling. I was just openly. I called the journalists and I told them that this is unacceptable, and I don't want to live with that.
I think we should probably come back to that question again later, because in the more recent past, so the first, it very often arises this question of where, at what point should principle come between you and your career, or at what point should you be, as a diplomat, let's say, stop being practical, pragmatic, and start doing things that maybe aren't even in the, well, certainly not interested in the interest of your career, but also aren't necessarily interested in the economic interests of the country, steps for you to take.
You know, again, David, this is something what I fully respect those who are saying that this is unacceptable for a diplomat to do things like that, to interfere in the domestic policy. My view is that we as a diplomats, we are not allowed to interfere openly in domestic affairs of the countries where we serve as the ambassadors or as a diplomats, foreign diplomats, in the hosting countries. But if it is about our own country, where we are citizens, first of all citizens of this country, it's a duty, it's an imperative to react, because it's our country, where we vote, where we live, where we have our children, when we want to rise.
So bringing it to today's context, so the diplomat should be very cautious about criticizing China over Tibet.
No.
But should not hesitate to.
No. Well, actually, I'm not saying that we are not. We shouldn't criticize something was wrong, but it should be done in context of our foreign policy. It should be organized and coordinated with your government, with your parliament. And of course, once we are now members of European Union and NATO, it should be coordinated with our allies and other members of those organizations. But once if you are just doing something solo, because you believe that you don't like some minister or something, in the government where you serve, it's against the rules. But criticizing countries if they do something wrong, and especially if they are committed by themselves to do things like support or respect the human rights, and they sign some international documents and treaties where they commit themselves to respect it. So you are obliged to do it, but not as a solo, but as a representative of the country.
And who would you feel closer to? I mean, in that respect, would you feel closer to someone like Karl Schwarzenberg, former foreign minister, who's quite outspoken, or to someone who's far more cautious, like the current foreign minister, Mr. Zauhan?
Well, I prefer to be blunt and clear and predictable. And I like foreign policy which is not only predictable, but which is also which is a continuity. I think that the heritage of Václav Havel is something what gave us a great chance to be not only more visible, but to be also used as an example for others, example to follow. We were really boxing above our weight quite a long time.
And that was because he was undiplomatic?
Yes, because he was not undiplomatic, he was not aggressive. I never remember him being aggressive. He was just, he believed in truth, and he believed in the power of the truth. And he was trying by arguments and by his very honest and I would say very human approach to persuade the other side that it is much better to live in freedom, in democratic society, where individuals have the respect of the state, and where people are not scared of their own state and the institutions of state, where they understand that politics is service to its citizens. And so on. I could continue. I'm not here to make a lecture about the morals.
But we are in the Václav Havel library, and I think when I spoke with Alexander Vondra, somebody complained afterwards that we didn't talk enough about Václav Havel, so I think that it's perfectly legitimate. And I'd like to ask you as well about one question about Ireland when you were there, because you happened to be in Ireland at the time of the referendum on the Nice Treaty, which decided on the future direction of Europe, or the functioning of Europe as it expanded so that it could continue functioning. Ireland was the only country that had a referendum, and as we know, the no vote unexpectedly won. Again, looking into your crystal ball, was this something that you failed to predict, that this was going to happen?
Actually, at that time I was already a bit better in forecasting. So I was warning our officials that it could happen, because they really underestimated very much in Ireland at the time.
And what went wrong then? If it did go wrong, or maybe it didn't go wrong, maybe it was the right decision.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was the right decision, because it could block us as a candidate country to enter the European Union, to join it. What was wrong? You know, the politicians in Ireland simply at that time didn't respect some legitimate fears of people, and they didn't address those concerns properly. So, and they were totally, well, fear is not stupid or good, but fear exists or does not exist. You have to simply work with that. If it exists, you have to find out what's behind and try to explain that there is no reason to be afraid.
And there's an element of that in Sweden as well, where you also served as ambassador.
Yeah, well, it's an element everywhere. You know, it's quite.
I mean, that's specifically Europe.
Yeah. But I think that, you know, in Ireland people were afraid of the abortions which could suddenly be implemented in Ireland if they approve Nice Treaty, and it is a very Catholic country, so for them it means a lot. They were afraid of their neutrality. It could be lost if they don't reject it, because they believe that, well, it means that they will become members of NATO or something like that. They were afraid of this common foreign and security policy approach of European Union. They were afraid of quotas for fishermen and other things, you know, which were absolutely not related to this treaty. But as I say, fear exists or does not exist.
But time has shown that these are very fundamental questions in Europe that we're facing now. For example, with decision making over what to do in relationship to Russia and Ukraine, for example, where Europe is almost, to its, well, it is through its very structures, not united, and has no reason to be united, precisely because it doesn't have a common foreign policy, a common defence policy?
Well, it's true. I'm almost a federalist, speaking about the European integration, and I believe that we have to, if we really want to succeed and if we want to survive as a European Union, based on our values, that we have to be also ready and able to defend it. Well, the gap between expectations of people and promises of some politicians, unfortunately, and the special stage of development of European bureaucracy also meant for many people that they started to identify themselves with the European process, the process of European integration. They were afraid of some new isolated elite which is governing them and showing them how they need to, the way they need to go and what they need to do, and implementing a lot of restrictions and laws which are totally crazy and they don't understand it. So, is it real or not? It doesn't matter so much. The problem is if you are not, as a politician, able to reflect that people are losing sense of your project and they are not identifying themselves with that. So you need to address it, you need to worry. It's frustrating sometimes, then you need to explain simple things like 1 + 1 + 1 is 2.
It's interesting because you said that you don't think that diplomats should actively become involved in the politics of the country they're in, but in Ireland you actually took part actively in the Yes campaign when the referendum was repeated.
Yes, again, well, that was, but at that time I really coordinated with my government. I was supported fully in my effort to...
Did you feel you were on thin ice?
Well, I have to say that when Irish government came to me and asked me if I could help them with this, it's impossible to call it propaganda, but it was a bit propaganda, simply to educate people and to persuade them that the Treaty of Nice is not against their interests. I was first a bit surprised, and I asked the government what they think about it. They were also a bit uncertain if it's really the right thing to do, but I have to say that it proved to be good. First of all, from personal reason, we were visiting all villages on the western coast where fishermen live, and it was very nice. And then I realized once you are really trying to argue with people, or actually it's not the arguing as such, it's a dialogue. If you really lead the dialogue, and if you are listening what people are saying, if you try to understand their concerns, and you are not insulting them by telling, well, it's stupid, it's not real, then it helps to create not only understanding but also quite nice atmosphere, and they like you finally, because well, democracy is a dialogue, democracy is about discussion.
Do you think maybe it's a bit of a weakness in Czech political culture, this tendency maybe not to look over the mountains at how the people on the other side of the Czech border in all different directions, maybe a lack of interest in seeing the world from their point of view?
Well, you know, it's again, it's quite universal phenomenon, ignorance. It's not only a Czech problem. I believe it's a problem everywhere. Sometimes it's more visible and problematic. Sometimes it's less. But again, you know, well, I remember once when my younger son came from school, and he was in German school in Ireland, because we wanted to not to speak only German, not to speak only English, but also speak German as well, and of course Czech. So he came back from this German school, which was quite prominent school, quite expensive as well, and he was, well, just it's. you know, he was not, usually he was very temperament and talkative boy, and suddenly he was so sad, and we didn't understand what's happening, so we were concerned.
Something from angst, maybe.
Yeah, well, in angst, there was no fear. I think that the problem was that he was told in the school that they have, as a kids, as a pupils of the school, they have to help by collecting money and clothing and other things to those poor kids who are not so lucky like them and who live in those countries which are very poor and where they are starving and so on. And they got a map from the teacher, and on this map the Czech Republic was among those countries where those kids were living in bad conditions, starving, you know, having a lot of illnesses and things, diseases.
That was the level of ignorance.
And he was really very sad about it. I told him, but Adam, you know, it's not your problem. You have no reason to be shy to say in that school that they are stupid. Because this is their fault, that they are so ignorant, that they are so uneducated, they don't know what's the reality. And if you want me to do that, I can do it. As your father, and of course as the ambassador as well. I can even write the note.
They probably get back to you by return of post, I think.
It's your job now to do that and to explain them how stupid they are. And you are better.
How old was he?
He was 9.
9, poor kid. Did he manage it?
He did it.
Great. I'd like to move on to America, because you went to the United States when you became ambassador to the United States in 2003, was it? 2005? 2005. And when Alexander Bondar was here 2 months ago, he talked about Bill Clinton, and he was full of praise for Bill Clinton. You were there during the George Bush Jr. days. What were your impressions of George Bush?
Well,
very different character.
I'll be very blunt. You know, I think that, of course, he was not so intelligent or well educated as some other presidents, but he had some very special personal charisma. He could be very friendly. No formal approach. I remember when I was just presenting my credentials, actually I met him before in Prague. No, somewhere, you know, in some other Prague. It was just after. So that was my second meeting with him, and he he really persuaded me that he remembers our first meeting, what of course was not the truth, because he couldn't remember that. But he managed to persuade me, oh yes, of course, we have met, that's true, yeah, you are right, yeah, well, perfect. And then he looked at my son, the younger one, who had very long hairs, and he was really very insisting on that he needed to keep it like that, and cruel.
Long curly hair. Yeah. Like in hair in the.
Like in hair, and he came to me and said, "You are allowed by school to have this hair?" I'm in British school, international British school. Oh yeah, well those Brits, they are very liberal. And then the
liberal, of course, in his vocabulary is not a compliment.
Yeah. And by the way, you know, I don't like too much patriotism or the pathos in politics and in foreign policy, but we have to admit that Americans are a bit different, and well, sometimes you need to have a leader who is not very complicated and who is not doubting all the time and relativizing. How to say? Relativizing things.
And this was at a time when the debate was going on about missile defense.
It was later. I believe that, you know, it was one of my real jobs there But I think that for speaking about Bush and about his character, how to characterize him, he believed that black is black and white is white. Sometime he probably had some glasses, so he didn't realize that white is not so white. But well, you remember war in Iraq and the debates here in Europe, if we should as Europeans support the United States in Iraq or not. For him it was just the question, oh yeah, we go there and you can go with us or not, but we go there anyhow. Anyway, well, history would judge. You know, I think that if we, for example, Ronald Reagan, you know, he was also not a very complicated guy, but he had a very good instincts, and I think that without him, maybe the Cold War would not end up like it
as it did. So you're suggesting that Reagan got it right, Bush got it wrong? Give a diplomat's answer.
No, I wouldn't say that. I can't judge it like that. I think that Bush was really kind of the leader who did a lot of positive and good things. Then, of course, his second term was very damaged by many things which were simply too complicated, and people were they get tired by him, by his Texan approach. You know, what works in concrete situation 3 years ago, it doesn't work afterwards. And
you, I think, just overlapped with the Obama administration as well, didn't you?
Yes, well, we were there about 2 years, 1.5 years.
And I mean, how did you feel about the decision, the administration's decision, for example, to change its mind on putting missile defences in Poland and the Czech Republic?
Well, I wouldn't say that I was not disappointed, but you know, I like to be fair. And that's the moment where we disagree with my dear friend Sasha Vondra, who was very furious and angry, and he blamed...
You spoke about it when you was here.
Yeah, okay, so I can imagine, because we were debating many times about it. And he was one of the authors of the open letter to the Obama administration about abandoning Europe and European allies, and actually being too friendly to Russians and so on. Yeah, in this moment, later on we can speak about the US policy towards Russia, or Obama policy towards Russia. It proved to be really wrong. But speaking about missile defense here, let's be fair. We didn't manage in this country to persuade our own people that we should have it here. We didn't even have in our parliament enough votes to approve it. So what? How we can blame the United States? Did we want that they would behave like comrades from Moscow who would ignore what's the situation
isn't part of the problem, though, that there was this pretense, in a sense, that it was going to be a way of protecting Europe against rogue states in the Middle East, which was the implication that was made. Whereas in reality, at least as Sasha Vondra put it when he was sitting here 2 months ago, that wasn't the reason for the whole anti-missile shield. It was that Russia was what they were worried about, and that there was a kind of a deception from the very beginning, which neither the population believed here nor did the Russians.
You know, again, David, that's the question of the perspective. From what angle you see that? Many people here perceive missile defense as actually people who are my friends. Perceive missile defense and radar as another kind of the insurance instrument against Russian influence here. But for Americans, it was really not against Russia in the first place. First of all, they maybe realized that if they increase their military presence in Europe, especially in Czech Republic and Poland as a center, or east, from their perspective, Eastern European country still, That of course it would mean that the protection of those countries is then better. But they really, I believe sincerely, that they really believed it should be against those possible terroristic attacks from Iran and Korea and so on. Because the plan was really to have it also on the western part of the United States, not only to protect Europe, but also the United States and the western from Asian attack. So we here in this country, many of us believe that once we manage to have American radar here, our situation from the security point of view would be better. It will be more safe. Yeah. For Americans, it was hard to use it as an argument. And then when Obama came with his policy of reset towards Russia, yeah. Of course, the dream of many people here melted down, you know, it was destroyed.
And I'd like to ask you about what this reset happened, in fact, while you were still ambassador in Washington, didn't it? It was before you went to Moscow as ambassador. And I'd be interested to know how you felt at that time about Obama's reset. I mean, did you feel it was naive? There was always, well, I always had the feeling that at the time with Clinton, there was always Madeleine Albright, who was sort of one of those people who was kind of, Czech interests were kind of in there at the back door.
Honestly, Madeleine was not
in a sense in Washington.
Yeah. Madeleine was not the really stubborn supporter of missile defense project. Mm. He believed in a different way. And when Obama came with the new architecture, again, once we speak about this, we should be fair and to remind that they were not totally abandoning a missile defense project. They were suggesting to have a new architecture of missile defense project. And I remember when Vice President Biden came to Prague, and he was trying to persuade our caretaking government that we should continue with the United States as allies to participate in this new program. How hard job he had here. They didn't want to. You know, they were really, as a caretaking government in very problematic situation, pushed from one side by our hawks, and from the other side reminded by Social Democrats, especially by Mr. Paroubek, who was the chairman of the Social Democratic Party, that they are not allowed, or they are not designed to make decisions like that as a caretaking government. And I did something really, again, what the diplomats are not supposed to do. I did something terribly wrong from the official point of view, but I believe that I did something right. When I persuaded our Prime Minister Fischer that he should ignore the suggestion of Minister of Foreign Affairs, who said, well, that we will consider to participate. So I just told him, ignore this word, consider to participate. Look to my eyes, I'll be sitting in the first row with the press conference with Biden, and Americans were just, you know, what, so what? And so, calm down, look at the Prime Minister, who was watching me and said, yes, we are ready to participate. And the word of consider disappeared from the text.
I don't know, when you're taking decisions like that, just to come back to Václav Havel, did you sort of have a sense of Václav Havel looking over your shoulder when you're making decisions like that? Because it's the sort of thing that he would do. He probably also rather like the theatre of it.
Well, I have to say that sometimes, first of all, I very miss him. Was for me always kind of the mental refreshment when I could visit him in his office in Prague Castle, or then in Warszawska Street. I felt like you know, like a flower, which is in the days like that, getting the fresh water. So I really miss him. But actually, I was always, you know, it's paradoxical, because I was his advisor one time. but I believe that I never advised him. Actually, I was getting advices from him. We were always only debating, and when he asked about my view, as a very kind person, I already recognized when he disagreed or when he had a different opinion, but he could put it in a very nice way, and then actually, yes, he was kind of the teacher and mentor. I learned from him, and when I made the decisions which were in my life crucial, and I still remember them, I would say I hope that he would approve it. And sometimes, you know, he was not only the politician, he was a writer and philosopher. So when I, for example, during the visa issue, when we were debating visa-free regime, visa waiver regime with the United States, and I was persuading US Congress and
successfully.
Yeah, well, but with missile defense I didn't succeed, but with visas I succeeded. Because, well, with missile defense I didn't manage to persuade our people, our citizens, our Congress. With visa waiver was easier. I was persuading Americans, and it's a nice job. It's a nice job if you persuade someone who is really listening and who believes your story. And they are very
Why didn't they believe
emotional.
the Poles at the time? I've never understood
Post quit our coalition. We built the coalition of post-communist countries, EU, new member countries of European Union, and new members of NATO. Because I told them, you know, guys, we have a story in the Czech legends, you know, in our history that one of our kings, I told them kings, you know, how to explain what. It's not a king. So I told them that we had a king who had 3 sons, and he was dying. He called them and he told them that once you stick together like 3 branches of well, because he asked them to cut one, they managed, and then when they had 3 together, it was hard to break it. So I told them, well, now if we stick together, if we create the alliance, it would be easier for us and harder for them to reject it. And Poles were first stage they were with us, and they afterwards they believed that they have such a special position in the United States and such a strong diaspora that they could succeed without our coalition.
So it was quite a sobering experience for them.
Well, but you know, they have I have to say that sometimes I'm really jealous that I'm not Pole and that we don't have a Polish politicians now. This Polish government and president, this is something what I would definitely love to have here. Minister Sikorski, together with Prime Minister Tusk and President Komorowski, this is a dream team, I would say. So they are different, and they are very stubborn sometimes. They are punished because of that, but they still believe in their way, and it's something what I very much admire.
And you've already hinted at this phenomenon in America, the United States, when you were ambassador, sort of confidence that we talk about with George Bush, the bigness of the United States. You then went to Russia, even bigger geographically, albeit not in terms of population. Was it a similar experience in a sense? Was there a sense of it being a mirror of your experience in Washington?
Well, some of our diplomats, whom I don't like very much, I have to.
Now that you're no longer a diplomat, you can be undiplomatic.
And I will not name him, you know, just. But I really have to admit that I don't like him very much. But he had a saying that Americans are better dressed Russians, you know, than I don't agree. First of all, you know, what I love about the United States is...
I'm trying to think who it could be who said that.
I'll tell you later, maybe only for you. No, first of all, Americans are very optimistic people, and they are very emotional people. And they love success, but not for all price. You know, they wish you success. If you fail, if you don't succeed, they are trying to encourage you to try again and do it. And there is a second chance, and there is a third chance, and don't give up. Simply go ahead, and finally, if you succeed, they are applauding. Of course, there are also people who are bad and who are envy and who are not nice, but in general, as a nation, they are very enthusiastic and they really love to support each other. In Russia, it's unfortunately different. They, of course, they have a lot of very nice people, fascinating intellectuals. I had a very enlightening debates with many of them. But as a nation, unfortunately, they don't believe in their future. Many of them simply are leaving the country, or actually at least putting their money abroad. They are sending their families to live abroad. In London, there is a huge diaspora of wealthy Russians who live there. I can't imagine that Americans in such a massive way would do that.
And do you think they won't go back again?
In Russians?
Yes, the ones who've left, the ones who are in London, their kids.
Some of them, yes.
English
well, some of them, yes, but they, you know, look at the Russian history. Once you became successful, and I'm sorry that I'm generalizing, because it's not, of course, fitting to all individual cases, but you know, you need to generalize a bit if you want to describe and illustrate some national character. So look at their history. If someone succeeds and was successful in building something, then usually something happened, was destroyed, his wealth, his life, his family, his future. Oprichniks from Tsar came to boyar, to the noble families, and to steal them.
That's true with the history of most of Europe as well, though.
Yeah, well,
many countries where that hasn't
but not so brutal. I wouldn't say not so brutal. Of course, we had some bad times and better times. But you know, for example, the Bolshevik Revolution. Then what happened then with Stalinism? Can you imagine millions of people, elite of the nation, killed by this? Of course, Germany. We can have a comparison with Germany, but again, Germany proved to learn a lesson from that. Unfortunately,
so Russia hasn't.
Well, Russia. If you hear the president of Russia is saying that the worst thing which could happen in 20th century was a collapse of the Soviet Union, I would expect that he would say that was the World War II.
In which 25 million Russians
lost
their lives. Yeah.
But not collapse of the Soviet Union.
Did he really mean it? I mean, isn't he being taken out of context or misquoted on this one?
Well, I believe it's recorded. So misquoted, it's impossible because he really said it. And if he really mean that, well, I am not a psychologist, but once you say something like that and then you not make a dementi, and he had many opportunities to make a dementi, then probably he could. I'm
just wondering whether, you know, there are a lot of myths about Russia here, and there's a lot of sensitivity about Russia in this country. I'm wondering whether there are dangers of imposing stereotypes on the reality.
Yeah, when I came to Russia, one of my goals, my personal goal, was to fight with the stereotypes. I'm not anti-Russian. I'm not Russophobic. So I believe that we have to do everything possible to destroy some of those stereotypes, to explain people here that Russia also is not Soviet Union anymore. It's not a communist power. Of course, it's emerging. At that time, I believe it's emerging democracy. There's a lot of problematic issues.
You no longer believe that?
Sorry?
You no longer believe that?
Now I am, because I'm by definition optimist. I always try to see the glass half full.
And you've already said that you're good at getting your predictions wrong, so...
well, sometimes, you know, even the glasses could leak. So, no, I believe that in the long perspective, they still have a chance, and we have a chance to partner with them.
It seems that in what ways can we give Russia space? Because currently there's obviously there's a psyche in Russia at the moment that they feel hemmed in. There's a lot of this very defensive, well, aggression, acting aggressively through this sense of being in some way threatened. Are there ways in which we can find outlets for that?
Well,
enable Putin and whoever succeeds in one day to feel that they don't have to be this constant, almost I suppose paranoid, defensive.
Well, unfortunately, first of all, when I came to Russia, I really believe that we have a chance to do something step by step, probably not very fast process, but we can do something together where the mutual confidence could be built, and then after during the process we can learn about each other more and not enough to understand that even if we are different, because many Russians are insisting that they are not Europeans, so that they are saying we are Euro-Asians. And I learned the lesson from my own experience. Then when I wanted to make a compliment to some Russians, some Russians are, well, some intellectuals are, well, definitely are maybe even more European than we are here. But this is unfortunately quite a marginal group of people. But sometimes it happened to me, especially in the country, when I told them, but you are Europeans like we are. No, we are not like you are. We are Euro-Asians, and it's different. And we have a lot of Tatar blood in our veins, and we have a different history, a different experience. And with you Europeans, you always, the Western world always try to abuse the situations which were bad for us when Mongols or Tatars were attacking Russia. We were looking to our Christian brothers in the West, and what they did, Swedes came and fight with us, and Poles came and fight with us, and then French and Germans, and so we were always fighting. So you see that they are still very suspicious about our liberal values.
So Russian literary culture, Russian musical culture, art is at the very heart of Europe, isn't it?
No, but it is. That's why we are confused. Sometimes we read their classical literature, listen to their classical music, and we believe that they are part of our culture. They are, but at the same time, this is a very big country and big nation. They somehow live in the idealistic view that they are obliged to protect all Slavic nations, all Slavic brothers, and they sometimes forgot to ask those Slavic brothers.
All the Slavic brothers are all in Europe, though. That is Europe, isn't it? The other Slav countries are in Europe.
Yeah, well, that's true, but and sometimes they ignore the fact that we are in Europe.
So I'm wondering what this other thing is. That obviously they say we're not Europeans, so I'm wondering what the other is.
Well, they were not able to define it properly. Sometimes when I ask, and when I ask them why they are afraid of our liberal values, that they could destroy their traditional values. What are those traditional values then? And those debates were not easy. It usually ended up with a big headache afterwards, and I had to, the day after, in the morning, drink a lot of black coffee.
And do you agree with Sasha Vondra, for example, who says that we spend too much time talking about things like gay rights in Russia, and that these are issues that aren't key to European-Russian relations, and that we should be talking, the debate should be happening at a completely different level, that it's not all about gay rights or Pussy Riot or whatever, but it should be a different debate.
Of course, this is something what is, again, it's quite sensitive, because I know a lot of Russian intellectuals who are trying very bravely and heroically to to put it on the table all the time and to have it as an agenda. But it's true that if we want to partner with them, and I still believe that that was the Obama's attempt with his reset, to try to give them chance somehow to understand that we are not the enemy. I mean the West, not the Czech Republic, but the West, NATO, that we are not the enemy anymore. But they still perceived as an enemy, and you know, if we concentrate for issues like gay rights, and if we prize here pussy riot so much, and we have a very limited knowledge about this group, which is personally sympathetic to me, but for many Russians they are like a devils, because you know they did something terribly wrong. They were in the church dancing and singing something what was not the religious liturgy. And you know, after the collapse of communism, Russians were looking for some new ideology which could unite them, and many of them found again the Orthodox Church. So this kind of the attack by anarchists, we would laugh here in our part of war, or not laugh, maybe we would just put them to some monastery for 2 weeks of
to sort of clean up the floor.
Yeah, clean up the floor, just to give them some lesson. But for Russians, it's different, and we have to really understand the complexity.
We have to respect that.
Well, we have to respect that. We have to ask Russians to debate it, because once we do it from outside, these political issues, which are, of course, from our point of view, you know, we see it very differently. But once we interfere, actually, once we comment it, they perceive it as an interference, and they immediately, some of them use it and some of them abuse it as a approval, as a evidence of our ignorance, of our difference, that we don't understand them, that we don't understand why they react such as they react.
And with this gazing into the crystal ball again, did you have any inkling that what happened in Ukraine and Crimea could happen?
Actually, I was a bit afraid of something like that, because the rise of
Georgia.
Georgia was the first example, and well, you know, it's there are two main factors. First of all, what's happening with Russia. First of all, we have to say that Russians are living in much better conditions than ever. Majority of Russians. They are not very, many of them are not very dedicated Democrats. They have a personal experience with 90s, with time of President Putin and democratization of the country.
President Yeltsin.
Yeltsin, sorry, yeah, thank you. With democratization of the country, you know, they invented the new word, as we say, democracy, demokratia, Russian language. They call it dermokratia. Dermo, it means the shit. Because for them there was a time of chaos, time of total, well, all institutions of the state failed. Many people were not receiving their salaries, and for them, you know, and they lost, of course, something what's very important for Russians: the feeling of the dignity and respect from outside. For many Russians, respect means almost the same like a fear, and this is the problem. One of the problems we have once we try to understand each other. Уважать кого, to respect someone, it means almost the same like to be a bit afraid of him or her.
And do you think that diplomatically we should respect that by trying to make the Russians be a bit afraid
well,
of us.
No, well, I wouldn't say respect, but we have to understand that there were many things which were not done properly, and it's not our fault. Unfortunately, this is the fault of their elites, of their. We had the same chance like they have, and we more or less succeeded with all of mistakes we made, but we simply succeeded. We have a democratic country today with a lot of criticism to some aspects of it, but my dream came true, that we live in a free country. They didn't succeed, so this is their problem, their mistake. But we should understand that there were some Western elements of this failure. A lot of so-called investors from Western countries and so-called businessmen who participated in this great stealing of because they don't call the privatization, they call it great stealing and oligarchization of the country.
It seems that in the West we're not very willing to confront that share that we have the responsibility.
Well, we don't have a time or will or empathy enough. I don't say that we need to accept it, but we should understand why they were supporting Putin in some stage of their modern history. Because he came after Yeltsin, he started to build institutions, and he started to do things which were for many Russians very important. And because, as I said, to respect someone, to have to be afraid of someone, he built Russia, which is now again perceived by many Russians like the country which is respected from outside because we are afraid of it.
I mean, do you sort of share Sasha Vondra's view that there is this expansionism in Russia, that it's potentially threatening further countries, or do you think that's a bit of a myth? I mean, now the annexation of Crimea is a fait accompli. Do you think that Russia, that Putin was an opportunist, he took advantage of the chance he had to take Crimea, and that he'll be pragmatic in today's global economies as well, and that Russia will, as it were, settle down?
Again, my answer would be not fully yes or no. It's a combination of both. He is not, Putin is not an idiot. He is quite an intelligent person. Of course, trained and educated in KGB school, so he knows how to melt in, how to mingle into the society, how to somehow infiltrate or to create even the chaos inside of some groups of society and uncertainty, because then you can better govern. So that's another difference.
So you think he's actively doing that currently?
He is doing it in Ukraine, and so that's why I argue with Sasha Vondra and Luboš Dobrovsky, who are both of them very good friends of mine, who are saying that Putin would not stop and he would annex Ukraine, and we have to be ready for war because we will go to the West. I don't believe so. I am saying always that he is using the advantages we are giving to him. What happened with Georgia, actually Abkhazia in South Ossetia, it was because of our failure. I mean, the West was not clear enough. When Georgia and Ukraine came in Bucharest in 2008 to the NATO summit, they were hoping that they could get a green light for to start the negotiations talk about their membership.
France and Germany, wasn't it?
France and Germany blocked it, and then
because of Russia.
Because of Russia, and a few months afterwards, what happened? Invasion to Georgia. So they got it as an approval. Yeah, well, West is not ready to protect those two countries and to.
So you're saying that currently Russia is quite happy to have a sort of weak, unstable Ukraine.
This
so
is
does
the
that
plan.
mean that what the West should be doing, that European Union should be doing, and NATO should be doing is to be making them?
He is testing us. He's testing our ability to make a contra-reaction. Or what would we allow him? And I think that he managed a lot of things which are very good for him, not for Russia, of course, but for him. He was not very popular. His popularity was slowly, on the slippery slope, falling down. There were demonstrations against him, against false and fake elections. There was White's revolution. They were not just students or some intellectuals. It was the middle class protesting against him. And at that time he saw what could happen in Libya or in Egypt, and suddenly he got a chance to prove that he is the good Tsar, because for Russians the good Tsar is the Tsar who is expanding the territory, and he did it with Crimea. And his popularity, exploded. It's now about 70%, maybe even more, maybe 80% of Russians support him. So he managed to be more popular. He managed to be good Tsar. He managed to be respected from outside because people are afraid of him in the West. And now, Ukraine, why he should have all Ukraine as a part of Russia? Of course he would like to, I'm sure that he would like to, because this is something what is a traditional territory.
Probably couldn't afford it.
And he couldn't afford, and he knows that, and it would be very expensive, by the way. It would be very expensive for us, for Europeans, and for Americans as well, to establish some functionable state there. And he knows that, so for him it's much more effective to destabilize it, to keep the cows there, and to have it as a kind of tool in case he would need to negotiate with us.
And I mean, the Americans now want to have more NATO troops stationed in Europe. Obviously there are fears about reinforcing the security of the Baltic states, for example. The Czech government has reacted in an extremely lukewarm way to that, pretty much rejecting the idea, certainly from the Czech point of view. What's your view on that?
It's absolutely unacceptable. But I'm always trying, because I like America so much, among other things, because of the second and third chance. So I'm always saying, well, let's give them the second chance. By the way, this week we had here Aspen conference, Aspen Prague conference, and the first day of the conference we had a dinner in Strahos Monastery, where one of the speakers was not only President of Estonia, Ilves, who is quite clear, and I would love to have him as our politician, but also our Prime Minister Sobotka, who made this comment in Vienna about troops, NATO troops in Europe, and we would not support it because we don't think it's necessary. And he made a totally different speech. Totally different speech. It was like a Jekyll and Hyde, I was schizophrenic or what, but I say, okay, if he would now follow what he said during that dinner, then I would support him.
Do you think he's probably a dove by nature who's feeling...
Hopefully reflects the mistake, and maybe even the criticism of the president, which is not my favorite, but I have to say that several times I have to really applaud to what Zeman said. It's crazy, but really it's true.
Well, what you mean when Zeman suggested that we should actually offer military support to Ukraine?
That was one of the things
yes.
I support.
And I'd like to ask you at the end, before we take questions, one thing that's fascinating about your career is also the sudden leap you took after being ambassador in Moscow, into the corporate sphere. You became the man in, I suppose, Russia, China, the Far East, for the PPF. Is it called the PPF Group?
Yes,
I'm not quite sure what it's called.
PPF Group.
Of Petr Kolář, one of the biggest corporations in this country. You described that experience, which didn't last very long, as I think you said it was a nightmare. You didn't enjoy it.
No, but, I wouldn't say. It was a great lesson. I hope that I could somehow use it even in the future. Well, this 1 year, I would say, was just enough.
And I'd like to ask you a concrete question, to what extent politicians, after you're seeing both sides, to what extent do you think politicians decide what happens?
You mean...
in terms of, generally, I mean, in terms of global geopolitics, is Mr. Kellner as potentially as powerful as Mr. Sobotka, for example?
You know, one of the reasons why I decided to quit this corporation was that I don't like if powerful billionaires are mingling with the politics. And I think that they should do their business. I very much believe in business and investments in other countries. I really very much support it. I think that this is something what is very wise to do business with other countries. But I think that we should not, well, we should keep the distance between politics and business, because the interests of state are interests of citizens and not corporations. And I really very much respect achievements of PPF, and I am very pleased that they do a great job, not only in Russia, what is now a bit risky and threatened by the current situation, but also in China. I think that this is important to do business with Chinese businessmen. Today's China is much different than China some time ago, and I really believe that it's going in relatively, saying relatively because of course we can't compare our situation.
And do the businessmen really care much about what the politicians say? I mean, if Mr. Sobotka, the Prime Minister, were suddenly to sort of to start waving a Tibetan flag, would that really have an influence on trade with China, for example?
That's something what I think that there is a limit. We should not do things which are against the dignity of the country and against the dignity of the nation. You know, our foreign policy towards China was quite complicated, but I believe it really was improving. We were trying through the dialogue to, not only as a Czech Republic, but also as a European Union, through dialogue to improve our relations and to understand each other better. We always had in our foreign policy papers, well, I lost the Czech word, so I can't, concept of our foreign policy. We always respected one policy, one China, so there was, I believe, no reason to emphasize it by adding some other words about Tibet. Dalai Lama is respected by many politicians on this planet as a spiritual leader, and he is a spiritual leader, no doubt. As a religious leader and spiritual leader, and he is not asking for independence of Tibet. He asked for autonomic construction, like it's in Hong Kong. And if China is able to live in this country with two systems, like Hong Kong and Chinese People's Republic, so why it shouldn't be possible with Tibet, or to do something special there? So I think that this is about the cultivated, enough cultivated dialogue, but not about, you know, ladies, forgive me, opening the S of and just to trying to be even more.
Less doppelbellismus.
Yeah.
I don't know how to translate that into English.
No, you know, we don't need it. I think that Chinese are, this is the big nation with a long history and with all respect to those who are not, you know, trying to be like, again, help me with the English, rohoshka.
Doormat.
Yeah, just, you know, well, we don't need it. I think that we can do business with them without behave like some slaves or raps. You know, it doesn't need to.
I've had a monopoly of questions so far. I'm sure there are other questions that you have that you'd like to ask Mr. Kolář.
Well, if I may, and it's one of these stupid questions that you can always ask in the United States. Nobody is critical of you. How come that so many Russians? How come that so many Russians can settle in the Czech Republic? Because I met so many emigres in the United States after the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. And they told me that the Soviet generals were absolutely ecstatic that the Soviet troops took over Czechoslovakia because now they were able to visit Karlovy Vary. And, and Karlovy Vary is really such a huge enclave of Russians in our country. It's on the western extreme of the country, but still, you know, aren't they creating a territory, same as they in some ways have in Crimea, or, you know, or in the Caucasus region, or in the Baltics? You know, what are we going to do about them? I mean, how come that they all really settle as business people? They come and bring investments?
No, many of them are here just because they bought a property. The father is doing business in Russia, and he sent his wife and kids to live here, and grandparents. They are, you know, we had a real estate crisis here, as in many other countries. Russians were able to buy flats and houses in many quarters of Prague. And we are free and open economy, so it's very hard to
I'd like to add something to that as well. I mean, I have two children in Czech secondary schools. Several of their friends in school, in class, are Russians, and they're not any different from anybody else. And if you ask them about politics, I mean, probably in about the case of the majority of them, they're not great fans of Mr. Putin. You know, so there are others, but it's sort of, I think it's a mistake to generalise. That would be my impression.
We have to be, of course, careful about those groups of Russians who are aggressively trying to infiltrate our policy and our business and so on. And I believe that the institutions of our state, like those BIS and the contract security agencies, of course, are aware of it. From the other hand, you may know, because you are too young to remember that, but you may know that in 20s of the last century, after the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, Masaryk Beneš, Masaryk Beneš and Kramar was one of the rare things where they could really agree to. They invited about 40,000 Russians who lived here in one stage, and
Kramar had a Russian wife.
Yes, but Masaryk has an American wife.
I prefer the American wife, I must say.
Yeah, so those Russians who lived here, they built the Free University and linguistic organization. Marina Tsvetaeva wrote the best poems here in Prague. There were many intellectuals, many lawyers, medical doctors,
I'm a historian,
so you know it. Actually, I don't need to explain it. So I think that it is, migration is something what exists. We of course could be xenophobic and we can say, well, we close the border and we will try to have our country only for Czechs. I don't think it's the right approach, and I don't think that
go straight home.
Yeah, you would need to go home. I think that, well, we have here different diasporas, the Vietnamese, so some Chinese, and of course Russians.
But I remember, if I may continue, that Mr. Dobrovsky was very critical of the visa policies.
I'm not critical. I think that we need to do opposite. We should invite and have as many young Russians, especially students, as possible here. This is the best way to show them that this is not really the country of enemy, that we are living in relatively good conditions, and our living standards are not bad. I remember for those young Czechs who could travel, how much they were influenced by positive examples and how much they wanted to have it here. During Aspen debates, there was a young lady who lived quite a long time in United Kingdom, and she told us her story once they came to England with her husband and kids, and neighbors invited them for tea, and she spoke quite well English already at that time. So she was asked, "Do you want a tea?" And she said yes. And the lady, the neighbor who invited her for tea, said, "Yes, please." Okay. "Do you want a milk and sugar?" She said, "No, no, thank you." So, those things are something what are influencing people, the behavior, the standard of culture. And I think that we should not isolate ourselves.
So you see Russians as Europeans, and yet you have said
I
they
see,
don't see that way themselves.
I see those who are trying to establish their homes abroad as those who are looking for something different and something better. So of course, I'm not so naive that I think that all of them are here only because of building of new and better life, and because of their oppositions towards Mr. Putin. It's far from the truth, but I still believe that if we have them here, they could be second, third generation part of the normal society.
I'd be interested in if we got to Milan Hauna here. Am I right, you're Mr. Hauna?
Yes.
But you're a historian, and you've done a great deal of historical research into the period that led up to the Second World War. There have been a lot of questions asking about whether we're living in a similar time. I would be interested to know whether you think there's any point asking that question.
I think we'll go a bit too far. I don't think really parallels between the situation in 1938, 39 and today. Besides, to start from the beginning, I don't want to be held responsible offering a shelter to Peter here in Washington several years ago for his subsequent career. But as a historian, I have the advantage or privilege or luxury to invent foreign policy, call it a hypothesis, and then change it according to my new research or new trends. So I have a slightly different view of Russian history or Russian threat. There are really three trends. There's a strong European one, pro-Western one, which struggles. And then there are two which are a bit unclear. There are the traditionalists linked up with the Orthodox religion, hanging on to their vast territory. And there are these you call Eurasians, which is...
I don't call them, they themselves call Eurasians.
So how would you call them, Asians?
I would not call them anyway.
Well, this is a justified term. It really exists, been developed in the 19th century. And the Russians are a unique colonial power, you know, which conquered Asia, expanded without crossing the seas. So the creation of this intact Eurasian colony is a fact. You know, not only a fact of geography, it's a fact of ethnic contacts, of you know, the Russians, a core of Russia was held by over 300 years by the Mongols, so there is a lot of intermingling. The Russians think that they understand Asia better than the Europeans. They are, you know, they provide a sort of link. And there is another dimension, of course, because this vast territory is a kind of the hinterland, saved in a sense of Europe. Back to the discussion about, you know, the lack of gratitude, and the Russians feel it in its. You've seen it recently in the speech of Putin in Munich, you know, approaching, criticizing the West as they don't show enough gratitude for the Russian sacrifice. It's not only the Second World War. If you open Dostoevsky and read him, his last pages of his diary before he died, it's a non-stop criticism of the West, that they don't really appreciate the enormous Russian sacrifice saving Europe from the usurper. Of course, that was Napoleon.
I have to say, on the other hand, my great-grandfather died in Gallipoli trying to help the Russians in the First World War as an Englishman, so it works both ways.
It works both ways.
But that's just a bit of...
So, anything I have with Ukraine, it seems to me that I see Ukraine basically as 6 parts. You know, the Crimea is just one part.
There was a Ukrainian
it's an unsettled territory.
Historian who said there are 100.
And I don't think the answer is to arm, you know, one section or the other and throw them against and wait for the winner. I think it's utter nonsense. I'm against it. The outer terrorists, they are these bandits who roam, you know, in East Ukraine, and I don't think that they are ready to surrender or to give up. I mean, there must be a solution to isolate them, and for that we need Putin to put Putin under pressure. I don't know how. He must withdraw them, but I don't know. He can do it, but at the moment he's not doing it.
It is a little bit like the Sudetenland, isn't it?
Well, I think it was.
It's all
linked to Crimea. Yeah, there is a
parallel.
parallel. There is a parallel with Crimea and Saarland, particularly the plebiscite in Saarland and the Sudetenland, and indeed. But I think Hitler moved much faster and had 99%, you know, built up propaganda support, which I don't want to see repeated.
Are there any more questions? I think if there... Yes?
I think you asked the question, but I don't think the question was completely addressed by you, so I'm asking again, may I?
Okay.
Do you think the PPF has had any influence over the Czech government's change of stance towards the human rights issues in China?
Well, I believe that PPF is so influential company where, like, you know, the big business is always influencing politics. It's not only here. You can see Madame Merkel, for example, in Germany, having debates with the business circles, what they should do with Russia, or what should be the reaction of Germany and the European Union. So they definitely are so powerful that I have no doubt that they are having influence on the politics. Especially with this current government and even the previous government, they had a better connections than with the previous government. There is no doubt about it. So if you ask about the influence, well, I think that there is a debate not only with the PPF, but with the business circles here. And I think that this government is more perceptive to what they have hear from business community.
Do you have an opinion?
Well, I was just reading. I was just following newspapers.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what is the real situation within this unit, the so-called.
So I think that they really are powerful enough to influence some aspects of the foreign policy. They do, as you know, they do a lot of things even in the culture sphere. They have galleries here. They admire the Chinese artists and painters and so on. So I don't say that this is all of this is negative. The problem is that there should be the clear policy, foreign policy, created by politicians, and there should be the continuity of this foreign policy. If we are not consistent, it is having very bad consequences for our domestic situation, but also for the situation abroad, how we are perceived abroad. I don't think that we should surprise our partners, even in China, even in European Union or NATO. Example: when Prime Minister Fischer meets Prime Minister of China.
Foreign Minister.
No, Fischer, Prime Minister, when he was a caretaking minister.
The Czech Prime Minister.
Czech Prime Minister Fischer meets the Prime Minister of China, and he creates the impression that there is that he is a great supporter of relations with China, and Prime Minister of China leaves the country, or they met here, I don't know where they met, but simply he is leaving the meeting with our Prime Minister with feeling that there is a now chance to improve the relation, and then Prime Minister Fischer shortly afterwards is meeting officially Dalai Lama. Then this is something what really is unacceptable, because this is the surprise. He shouldn't meet the Prime Minister of China if he wanted to meet the Dalai Lama, or he shouldn't meet the Dalai Lama if he wanted to create the impression with the Chinese Prime Minister that we are now almost allies. So I'm saying, don't surprise our partners. Be consistent. We should have a continuity in our foreign policy. We should be transparent and understandable, and respect others, but also at the same time ask them to respect us and respect our. And we, of course, we need to work hard to explain why we have the position like we have. And it's about the dialogue. I believe that this is something what we are capable enough to do, but we need to do it as a professionals.
I think we can carry on maybe informally. There's refreshments next door, I believe. And so, well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kolář, for coming, and thank you all for braving the peculiarities of the weather to come here. Thank you.
Thank you for your braveness and heroic approach that you survived it.
An hour and 43 minutes you were talking.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I
Spasibo za
No,
No, já dobrý, že jsem začal.